honey. You get down there. Good morning, everybody. Great to see you. Happy Monday, and welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. I'm talking to the baby over here. We've got a new potty mat down. Deciding if she's going to like it or not. Look at this thing before we put it down. Oop. Of course, she puts a foot on it at that moment. It's one of these kind of commercial ones, right? I got it off Facebook, and I thought it was homemade because it said it was, but it's really not. I don't think it is anyway, but really neat. And it's made onto this kind of a backing. Interesting, right? Prati, for those of you who are new to watching and new, to talking about rug making, Prati is when you use a tool that looks like a little ear flusher thing, like a little bulb with a soft point on it, to push material from one side, this would be the back, see all these little dit dots where they did it, to the front. Big, huge pieces that you wouldn't want to hook, right? Interesting. So we'll put that down. She's having her water now. I'll put that down and see if she wants to lay on that all nice and comfy. Welcome back. Monday morning. It's great to see you. Let's see who's here. We have some new people joining us lately, probably because of the article in Rug Hooking Magazine. We're going to finally be talking about Rug Hooking Magazine and the latest issue of ATHA in this episode. We'll see how far we get. My buddy Rebecca has a great article in the ATHA issue. Carol, great to see you. Great to see you. Christine, hello in Brockport. I think I have the wrong glasses on. Let me see. Let me see if this is going to help. I'm struggling already. Linda, great to see you again. We had such a great time at the Chagall class on this past Wednesday and this past Sunday. And I have since this morning put up by popular demand a class on the most requested artist of the series, Monet. So I put up the class this morning, and it is also in the description of this video, designing like Monet, Claude Monet. So that will be later in July. That'll be about a month away, maybe a little bit less. So that will be a lot of fun. He is the artist who people have most often requested, and I have been kind of holding on doing a designing like Monet class only because in terms of what we do in the class, we pull out shapes and designs and themes and how the artists evolve, work has evolved. And while we have that with Monet, we have a little bit less of that because he was such a, he loved his landscapes. He loved the Mediterranean. He loved Giverny. He loved the gardens. He loved the two women who were his wives and painting them. So there's a little less for me to pull from, but I know that I can do it. This class, the Design Like class, Monet, will be a little bit different because to make it work, I feel like part of what we have to do, and we did this with the Van Gogh class too, I put out a swatch set of yellows, blues, and oranges and really sort of creamy colors because those were Van Gogh's colors. It made it easy as a starting point. I was working on a piece that was hooked in those colors. It was easy to look at that artist's really signature colors. I'm going to do that again for Monet because I feel like in terms of approach, it's important to look at those very unique colors that I think we would associate with him as an artist and associate with his work no matter whether it's a garden scene or a still life or a portrait, he's using the same colors. So I'll be bringing out a swatch set, and that class is already out. And you know what else is out? Bingo tickets. So bingo tickets went out for sale last night. This coming Friday night, which would make it, if today is the 20th and it's Monday, 24th, right? 24th. Is that right? It must be the 24th. Friday the 24th, cocktail night, bingo night. So Kira's working on that. It's going to be a rug theme, but a little bit summery. Like there's going to be more than one summer theme because we're going to get back to doing our bingo once a month. For those of you who are new to the channel, we do a bingo game once a month with a giant wheel of fortune that's actually an old bicycle wheel, and I put little printouts of pictures of rugs that are on the cards on it, and we spin it. We make the call, we say who hooked it, whose design it was, and we look on the screen together at that particular rug. And again, a bit of a summer theme, early summer theme, a little bit patriotic for both Canada Day, patriotic Canadian wives for our Canadian friends, and also 3 days later, the 4th of July, for those of us in the U.S. So that will be a lot of fun. Bingo night coming up this Friday. Those tickets available, Monet available, and oh, my thing is across the room. I left my bag across the room. I'll go get it in a little while. I was working on a new piece that was a little bit patriotic, very summery. I don't know if you saw it yet. Stars and stripes and watermelons. And it's kind of like a folky figure, like a weather vane type figure without the angel wings, just a female figure holding a big old flag, a long skinny flag in kind of faded colors. And instead of lamb's tongues around the borders or scallops, it's watermelons, because why not, right? A bunch of these could be a lamb's tongue hit or miss style, but I'm doing them as watermelons, which I think is great for summer. So all of those things are new as of the last 24 hours and on the Ribbon Candy Hooking site. Let me come back to you and see who's here. Crystal, good to see you. You watched Cocktail Time. You were so inspired. I would love to too. He hasn't answered me yet, Ryan. And I want to mention Crystal is on, but I mentioned it on Friday night. And if you weren't with us for our cocktail night, gallery night on Friday, I mentioned on that night, I'm going to mention it again right now, that Crystal, our good buddy, the great talent, right, the powerhouse of design, Crystal is starting to put out kits, and you put out your Lily of the Valley kit, which is super, super, super beautiful and approachable. And you are a puncher, and this is a yarn kit, but somebody could also hook it. So this is a great start. Not only do we have your yarn for sale now, but the first kit has hit the market, and I'm super excited. I hope there are tons of sales. Kirsten, good to see you. Happy Monday in cool Vermont. April, good afternoon. Good to see you. And Cindy. Lisa, great to see everybody. Ivo, hello from Prince Edward Island. Great to see you. There are other buddies there for sure. Joyce, great to see you. It was a great episode Friday, wasn't it? Gallery night. It's another once a month thing, looking at each other's work, looking what people are working on and are about to start. Isn't that a lot of fun? I mean, you just feel like you're so in it, whether you're working on something or not, when you see what other people are doing or what they're setting up to start. It's just a good way to check in with each other, support each other, look at each other's ideas, see what other people are trying. For example, Whitney posted, I forget who originally posted it. I should have checked before I shot my mouth off. But she posted a Facebook thing from, it might have been another group, I'm not sure, where somebody was at some kind of a hook-in, and they were rug hooking a trash can. And by trash can, I mean those wire ones with the kind of open mesh. And she was sitting there, a clean one, of course, not like a dumpster fire can, but a nice metal can. And she was pulling loops through, and the can was looking very, very lovely. And it made me think of years ago, in the 70s and 80s, in a lot of our bedrooms. I know my friend Jen, who I always refer to as Buddy, she's still my friend, she's still my buddy. Her mom used to sew sort of casings on trash cans. And I remember thinking at that time, we were of an age where we were just throwing empty soda cans for 10 points from across the room. You know, it wasn't ideal. But she had all these sort of quilted trash cans around the room, and they were suffering terribly, and terrible indignities. But being more of a grown-up now, I could see why it would be quite a nice thing, particularly in a studio space, if you had a nice metal trash can and you were to hook at least part of it, right? Not all of it maybe, but part of it, a little floral motif or initials or a little bird or something like that. It could be quite nice, maybe a big border around it. Because if all that's going in there is like scrappies and bits of wool and not soda cans and leftover food, it would be a great little receptacle, and it would be real cheerful to look at all the time. And I thought, interesting. All of these ideas that get shared are just so wonderful. Gallery night was great for that. Cat's Gallery, great to see you. Jane from Wales, great to see you. Beautiful part of the world. Dave, you're there. We were looking at your piece. I know that you were out to dinner on Friday night. We were looking at your piece, your telephone piece, and I hope you saw the episode. You got a lot of nice comments because people were, number one, laughing at the fact that people regard those old phone receivers, those big clunky ones, as vintage or antique. But also people were loving the work in progress because it is a beautiful, important, and artistic piece, and we all enjoyed seeing it. And you say you hit a bargain stash of fabric on Friday, 4 yards of fine wool fabric, $2. Hidden in with the sheets and blankets at a charity shop. That's what we all live for, isn't it? I mean, among other things, but that is one of the great sort of holy grails, is rootling through stuff and finding a great stash like that. What a good price. That is fantastic, and I know you're a big one for dyeing too, so if it's not the right color, who cares, right? Isn't that fun? Lynn in Tucson, great to see you, and Nancy in sunny Nevada, great to see you. I'm just reading the thread. Heidi, you're there. Heidi, you're off for the summer, right? You're not doing anything work-wise right now. I'm hoping you're getting a nice quiet ride right now. Missed you. And Susie, good to see you. Tad, good to see you in Hudson Valley. So, oh, I saw, Linda, that you signed up for Monet. It's going to be a great class, and I'm going to get working on those colors. Monet blue is a term that I think everybody who goes to art school or has ever worked in the arts uses because it's so specific. But also all of the greens of the water lilies and the purple undertones and those creamy colors in the sky rather than the whites. It's very, very nice palette. We're going to look a lot at him in his life. I was so happy. Yesterday, I went to the book barn. I'm in Connecticut, and I went to the book barn in Niantic, Connecticut. Beautiful, beautiful sort of old-timey town with a busy main street right on the ocean. And what is called the Disney World of Books there that I talk about sometimes. They have many locations right there on the main street. And I was in the main barn, which is just crazy. I'll have to post pictures for you someday on Facebook for those of you who are my friends, which I hope you are. Because there's all these kinds of crazy outhouses, and the mystery part has like gargoyles outside and little tombstones out front, and the fiction area is huge and vast, and paperbacks are $1. Books in general are, for the most part, $4 for hardcovers. It's just fantastic. And their art section is vast and sprawling. And I was in there rooting around because I was thinking about the design-like book I'm working on writing now for Rug Hooking magazine. And I was thinking of other sort of offbeat artists. I've got plenty, but I was thinking of more. And I was going through all of not just the books, but kind of the gallery brochures and those real hard to find things that are quite expensive on eBay or eBooks. But in a bookstore like that, $1. So I picked up a bunch of those, but I also picked up some really good books on Monet that were like $4. And I thought, rather than checking them out of the library and risking having huge fees because I lost one or am late, why not just buy them for $4? I don't know if I told you, but when I took out the Chagall books from the public library, um, I had a bunch of them, and I had them with me while I was away on vacation. I was going through all that info because they are huge coffee table books. And one of the books was published by the Metropolitan Opera, and it was about Chagall's work on the opera The Magic Flute, which he's quite famous for, and many people regard as the greatest stage and costume design of all time. And I was going through it, going, gosh, these plates are just marvelous. These are lovely. I'd love to pull some of these out and frame them. And I looked it up on eBay, and the book was like, that same book in not as good condition as the one I was holding from the library. We're going for like 300, 500, 700. And then I looked at some other sites, and they were like 700 and up. And I thought, man, this is expensive. So when I returned the book, the lady at the library, who's never friendly, I was trying to give her my stack of books, and she was saying, no, thank you, put them over there. And I said to her, you might want this one. It's worth about $600 in this condition. And she didn't even say thank you. She just took it, and she put it over in the back there. And, so it's funny what you can find at the library. But I'm looking forward to researching the Monet project, and that will be great. So make sure you sign up for that if you have any interest in learning how to design like Monet, looking at his colors, looking at his life, looking at his compositions, his inspiration, all of the tricks he does to get that signature and iconic style. That's for us, too. We can access that. Of course, Monet is, at this point, public domain, copyright-free work, but we're not looking at recreating his work exactly the same way. We're looking at the way that he worked and designed and putting our own spin on it. That's what this class does. So, issue of Rug Hooking magazine, back to it. We started looking at some of the features in this last week before we ran out of time. I think we looked at, I'm going to change screens in just a minute so we can do our slideshow as usual. But I think as far as we got was just that first sort of article that I thought really stood out. There are some parts, there is some series in these Rug Hooking magazines, which is a bi-monthly. This one's for 3 months, the whole of the summer. But for example, we were looking at the beautiful backgrounds, and that is part 3 of a series. And it is nice when you get that kind of a series going because you look forward to the next installment of the same subject in a future issue. And that's what we had here, number 3. We looked at the beautiful backgrounds, and they really were beautiful. Barbara, great to see you. Oh, Cindy, did you find some wool this weekend at the yard sales? Oh, isn't that fun? 'Tis the season, isn't it? So we just about finished. There were more beautiful backgrounds to see. I just didn't want to do too much of a spoiler because I know you probably have already received the magazine, or maybe you're thinking about subscribing to the magazine. And regardless, I don't want to look at every single page, but beautiful backgrounds. That was a lovely installment. Let's come together for our shared screen, and let me bring you to what I think will be, let's see if this is right. Nope, that's a beautiful background. There we go. So the next article that I really stopped at and read was called Cats, Cats, and More Cats. I know there are some cat lovers here. Kirsten, I don't know if Penny's on. We have a lot of cat lovers in our group. But I thought this was a great article because it's a subject-driven article, right? We're talking specifically about cats. And it brought up some really good subjects, and it brought forth some really lovely work. So abstract, realistic, or cartoonish, the photography and the story here are by Susan Cunningham. And this is a lovely article. I'm going to look with you at some of the specific cats that are used. And, you know, again, this is just, it gives the subject a shape. Instead of looking at, for example, backgrounds, we're looking at specific compositions of cats. For example, this is a large cat. This is a bobcat, 34.5 by 21.5 composition. It is number 3, so very fine, cut wool on monk's cloth, adapted from a phone book cover and hooked by Susan Cunningham Laramie of Wyoming in 2008. There's a few things going on here that I think are extraordinary. There's more than a few. I love the fact that it sort of derives from a phone book cover because it does bring me back to those phone book covers of like the 70s, 80s that had photographs on them, right? And I'm guessing that's what this was. I think this is a beautiful composition. It makes sense that in Wyoming, one of the states I really love, you would see this kind of image, this nature image of a big cat on the telephone book, you know, the telephone pages cover. Do you see at the bottom how she sort of encrypted or embedded her initials, SC number 3, Susan Cunningham, 2008? Really cool. It's very faint, and it doesn't really hit you in the face, does it? But it's there. It's interesting to find on your own. It's just a cool way of signing your work because it basically is the same color as the background material, which is this beautiful sort of abstract marble, a lot of directional hooking, a lot of movement. But behind it, almost like when you're doing something in a Word document and you highlight it and you put a color behind it, like you block it, that's kind of what this looks like, a slightly lighter color. It's just a very cool way of signing. I haven't seen anybody sign their work that way before, and it becomes a pattern within the pattern. I think it's really clever, and it does its job as marking the work for future times, right? I love the patterning on this cat. This is just crazy. It's like it's so soft and spotty, and it's the striping on the face versus the spotting on the body is so right. It's just beautiful patterning, you know, against that background that has that much movement and these leaves that are like bursting with autumn colors, color changing leaves, every one of them very strong with these central veins that are dark. They read very, very well. Even the leaves that are against the bobcat's body are reading very, very well. There's graphic, there's just a few of them. This is just fantastic. I just love this piece. So Bobcat by Susie Cunningham. Now let's look at some of the other ones that are in here. This is another beauty. Let me flip the page. Very different, right? Same person. Designed and hooked by Susan Cunningham of Laramie, Wyoming. This one 10 years later in 2018. This is called White Cat. Really pretty. 21 by 35, number 4 this time, and number 5 on monk's cloth. So a little bit of a larger cut, slightly larger cut. Has that wonderful, you know, Pearl McGowan Jacobean feel, right? That needlepoint feel. You know, if you remember Erica Wilson, and we're going to get into looking at her as well, the embroidery, quilting, I mean, she did everything back in the 70s, 80s. She did beautiful crewel work like this too, very reminiscent of that time, very traditional, isn't it? And then the introduction of this lovely, slim, whimsical looking cat. It's almost like a fantasy cat because in terms of proportion, his curly cute tail is very, very fine, unnatural, but beautifully rendered. And then his slim body, more like a ferret's body, right? Real slender, sleek, and lovely. Beautiful little profile face. It's another great piece. I love how the ground swells up under the cat to meet him. I love how sort of, I don't want to say rough and ready, but I love how the ground looks, right? Those mix of browns, very simple changing of colors in the ground, earthy colors, very solid looking, is in comparison to, if you look closely at the sky, it's that antique black sky with lots of movement and those very filigree leaves, very needlework, needlepoint style flowers. There's a lot of fine and fancy work that contrasts with the much more traditional rug hooking themes like the antique black, like the way the ground looks, very typical traditional. So those things together make for a lot of interest. It's so sweet how the cat is looking at this like fancy Jacobean style butterfly too. Lots to look at in this piece, but it remains a simple piece. It's a very, very strong piece. Another beauty from Susan Cunningham. This piece really struck me too. It's a comic piece. It's something so different. Also by Susan Cunningham. Susan Cunningham must have written this article. Let me just double check. I said it 2 minutes ago. Yes, she did write this article. So this makes sense. She loves cats. Another piece by Susan Cunningham, 2019, Irish cat, 23 by 32, number 4, number 5 cut again on monk's cloth. Really beautiful comic piece, explosion of color, so whimsical, so funny, so fun, so lighthearted. It looks like the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, right? It has that Irish feel, and not, I don't just mean the alcoholic beverage. I love the stripy colors. I love the sort of ombre background shifting, the clover in the hat, the card. Is that a card? What is that? The 3/17. Is that like a reference to a game? I should probably know that, right? But I don't. I know somebody knows that out there. Beautiful big full moon. Look at the way the tree is hooked. It's so realistic, isn't it? And the rest of it is very fantasy. It's very cartoony. So there's some realism here. There's a nice blend. You like to see different styles within one piece. I do anyway. And I love that the border is kind of a mix of the purple and the kind of pinky lilac that's in the cat's body. I love this piece. I love that it looks like the Cheshire Cat with the big grin. You know, the reason that a piece using the Cheshire Cat in this way would be okay, because we've talked about this before. I'm going to come back to you for just a minute. We're always thinking, particularly when we're putting something in a magazine, that kind of thing, of copyright issues. There's no copyright issue at all here. And I have said in the past, you have to be careful with some things, even though Alice in Wonderland is of an age where the illustrations would be copyright free, because the Disney movie leaned so closely to the original illustrations in the book. It becomes very dangerous territory, because Disney could come at a person in theory if you did something that was very close to the Alice in Wonderland illustrations, because they could say, well, these also look like our illustrations because it's exactly what the movie looks like. So you see how that becomes a problem. But in this case, it's not a problem in the least, because the cat looks very, very different. It's a very original handling. He's wearing the Mad Hatter's hat. So Ted, does the Mad Hatter always have the the ratio of 3/17 on his hat? Is that like March 17th, or does that mean something? I feel like I'm doing one of those exit room puzzles and I'm just not smart enough to get it. I love the composition. Oh, Lynn says, isn't 3/17 March 17th? Of course it is. There you go. On the calendar, March 17th. Also my grandmother's birthday. Isn't that funny? Of course it is. Gosh. Good one. It's so cute. He's got a little yellow bow tie too. I think his 2 ears peeking up through the hat. It's such a fun piece. It's such a good piece. This is one of my favorite articles in this issue, because it demonstrates so much talent, and it's also so much fun. Now let me come back to our slideshow. Here comes the next one.
You're talking about Mad Hatters?
Yeah, we were talking about the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, the originals doesn't say 3/17.
Oh, okay. Well, she did the Irish version of it, and he was holding a stein of beer. It looked like maybe Guinness or something like that.
The original is 10/6.
Oh, the original one, he has a card in his hat that says 10/6?
Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding. Jay's just looking this up as a reference. Not doing your own work in the other room.
10 shillings
I like
and
that.
6 pence.
10 shillings and a 6 pence. Interesting. So it does have an earlier reference. Isn't that interesting? Someone is listening instead of working. Just kidding. It's fun. It's fun to take a little break. So different reference in the original book. That must be why there's a card there at all. So it was changed to 317. That's very good information. We've completely nailed it. That's good. How funny. Southern Soil, great to see you. We got there in the end. So, this piece we've seen before, Grumpy Cat, designed and hooked by Susan Cunningham. I forget what episode we were doing this. Maybe it was Bingo or something, but she did like a series of these cats wearing hats from, I think, a past Rug Hooking maybe magazine article. And we remarked on how lovely these pieces were. You love to see an animal dressed up, right? Not maybe in real life, but in a Rug Hooking piece. Lovely background in this piece, too. This could have easily been in the beautiful backgrounds segment as well. But I just love this cat. Very different than the other cat she's shown us. Also Susan Cunningham. Laramie, Wyoming, 2018, 21 by 21. This one's a square, number 5 cut on monk's cloth. It says Grumpy Cat made his first appearance, Rug Hooking Magazine, on the cover of the January-Feb 2019 issue. So that's why it looks so familiar. I just love the directional hooking in this piece. He has somewhat of a rounded head, right? A lot of soft roundness to his ears and his cheeks. Beautiful whiskers that bow out like a little white rainbow. And the background has so much directional hooking, top to bottom, with a color-changing material, either a very light plaid or tweed that goes super well with this turtleneck that he's wearing. That all of them are wearing turtlenecks in this series. Were you going to say something else about the Mad Hatter?
It was the price of his hat.
It was the price of his hat.
10 shillings and a sixpence.
10 shillings and a sixpence. Like he still had the price tag on.
Yeah.
He was, now who's that actress? Pearl, what was it? Pearl something that always had the price tag. Minnie Pearl, isn't it? Who in more modern times always had the price tag hanging off her hat. Crazy associations happening. So that was actually the price tag. That's even better. Thank you. That's really good research. Phones are amazing, aren't they? So moving on to the next article that I was looking at. Again, all of these articles have so much more going on. There were many more Susan Cunningham cats for you there, and beautiful text in all of the articles in this issue. Stories in Wool was the next one that really grabbed my attention. Sisters practicing their crafts, plural. Story and photography by Catherine Hitchcock. And this is called, the sort of subtext here says, The Heart-Hooked Sisters, Lisa Bleer, I think I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, Bleier, and Michelle Cavalcanti bring out the best in each other in their fiber arts and in life. They recently showed a collection of their traditional hooked and felted rugs titled Stories in Wool at the Village Gallery in Caledonia, New York. Gallery owners Bill and Linda White said that the work had broad appeal for fiber artists and others who were drawn to the bright colors, the whimsical designs, and the nostalgic stories of love. Now, these two sisters were born 15 months apart, and as you can see, they are combining. I think they're standing next to the character on the rug that depicts them, right? Let me flash to another one. But just take a quick gander here before I go more into depth. One sister is felting, like needle felting, and the other sister is hooking, from what I understand. I didn't read the entire article, not because it's not lovely, just always time stuff with me, but a little bit of a close-up on this piece that's called Heart-Hooked Sisters. It is a remarkable piece where part of it has been felted, the faces, and the rest has been hooked. So this is the kind of detail that we're looking at in their work. And I have to say, this is obviously a different piece, and this piece is called Angelina. Angelina represents the beautiful grandmothers in our lives, from secret pizza dough recipes and famous sauce on the stovetop, to putting the coffee on for visits and the tin of cookies that magically appeared when company came. Our days were spent with warm and loving souls who poured their endless love into all the food they prepared. So this one is Angelina. Beautiful pieces here. You see the food on the table, the food on this side, the different fruits, right, that are in the kind of stacked bowls, the tiered thing, and then all the things that are being prepped, all the vegetables, the garlic, the salt, the pepper, the grater, all that looks like the famous secret tomato sauce there. Really lovely compositions. All of this busyness really, really hammered down thoughtfully with this very strong directional flow in the background. I love the heart up in the corner, that little personal piece of love hooked into the corner really draws your eye. But the color of this directional background for me is the ultimate ideal color for this piece because we're talking about the kitchen, we're talking about food, and that color green for me, all of those colors of green really evoke a garden. Like the different colors of leaves, the different types of leaves and plants that come out of the garden, a little bit of like the darker sort of soil colors that you see when you're washing off garden, leaves, lettuces, and different kinds of cabbagey things. Really, really smart. Now, I think it's just smart in general that a lot of people who are rug hookers, whether you have been hooking for decades or you're just coming at it for the first time, one subject that people will avoid because of difficulty is a portrait because of the face. It doesn't matter what kind of skin tone you're doing, what color skin tone you're doing, a face is going to be difficult whether you're hooking very fine or not. Just as a painter would do, but I feel like a painter has an even more forgiving medium. When you're trying to get the shading, the contour, the shape, the details in that face with wool, right? You can't just take your paintbrush and nudge a little color up or add just a tiny dot of white and drag it down for a highlight. It really takes a lot to do that with a medium like rug hooking. I love rug hooking for so many things, but I also find it very difficult for portraits. And I am not, I don't like realism for myself. I don't enjoy doing it. It's not my favorite style for myself. So this doesn't come up often, but I know in general it does come up often. And I think a great way to think about the possibility of tackling subjects that are difficult for you, whether they're portraits or something else that is your Achilles heel, that you say, I would love to do that, but I don't dare because then I would have to do this part of it. And how difficult would that be? It would never look like the thing. Well, think about crossing over into a different medium like needle felting. Because we've said before on this show, just in a nutshell, and we'll talk about it more, maybe I'll do some more videos on it. Needle felting is one of the things that I covered in the first book I wrote, which hopefully is coming out later this year. It's taking a while. I still have to send some stuff in, believe it or not. But anyway, one of the things that I cover is needle felting, and I talk about dry felting versus wet felting, because if you're wet felting, you are literally wetting your felt. You are typically doing like a nice thick nubby piece under and you're adding a lot to it. You can also do dry felting, right, which is you're saving one step, but you're basically using the roving, which can be dyed in any color and bought in any color you can think of, even color changing materials, right? And you take off little bits of roving like it's cotton candy at a fair, and you get your needle, whether it's the one little needle or the very fine one or the very thick one, or it's the one that Clover does with maybe 5 needles coming down, and you're pressing it into your backing. Now, you can easily combine felting onto a rug hooked piece, right? So this is something that you could think about in theory, not necessarily wet felting. I mean, I'm sure it's been done and it's possible, but if I were going to include felting as a technique into a hooked piece, I would do dry felting for sure. And I would choose something like a face myself that I struggled with because I feel like pulling those little bits of cotton candy off and needling it down onto your piece, if you're looking at it and you're saying, yeah, it looks like her, but there's something, the dimples are missing. Then you take a little shadow of the darker and you put it in the dimple and you needle that down and stand back again and say, it still looks like her, but the hairline's a little bit wrong. Maybe it's a little bit of a higher hairline. Let me get some more of that skin color and needle it into the top. You can fool with it a lot more easily. It's just another thing that could go into your bag of tricks quite easily. It's very easy to start learning and practicing needle felting. It is wonderful to see an article like this where there are examples of someone or two people, sisters, who are doing this technique so successfully. This is another really, really grand piece. Sowing Seeds, right? It's so whimsical, so beautiful. Interesting color palette too, because they do a lot with like primaries, reds, yellows, blues, and greens. Green not being a primary, as you know, but this one is very offbeat colors. More the kind of pinky, salmon, rust, copper, patina type colors, turquoise. very sort of sea type colors that are very cool, mixed with these rusty orange colors and these warm pinks. It's a nice blend. And we've got these bunnies bouncing around and a little row of eggs. It's very unexpected, isn't it? It's very sort of mystical, mythical. It even looks like underneath that stream, you see a little bit of what's underground, right? This little network of patterning. This looks like maybe a rabbit warren, or it's just a reference to the underground. Sowing Seeds, 30.5 by 48.5, a celebration of women and the beauty and silent strength of trees and plants and all the miracle creatures of the universe. Sometimes we are honoring animals and our connection to them, like in this piece with the hopping rabbits. Other times our animals are full of whimsy, humor, or human-like expressions meant to make the viewer smile. Well, it certainly makes you smile. I just love the darkness of the trees. There's a lot of darkness in it, too. It does have that mythical feel to it. It has that fantasy feel to it. But the smile on the face, the frolicking rabbits, the little Easter eggs, it's cheerful, right? It's not a dark piece by any means. It's very cheerful, very upbeat. So, oh, okay, so this is let me just make sure that that was the last, yep, that was the last one I used from that particular feature. And again, there's a lot of text there, and there are a lot more photos to see there, a lot more photos. So I'm moving forward a little bit because I'm not covering every single feature that's in this article. I only picked out a few. This piece comes from a feature called Meandering into the Abstract, subtitled Take a Break from Realism. Story and photography by Sharon Hanford Oppegard, Oppegard. And this is a piece that is called Convergence. It's a detail of a piece. Torn strips in lighter weight wools will curl into themselves. She's showing you in this article, I'm not sure, let me just check and see if I have other pictures. Nope, I moved on to my article next. In this article, she's showing you there's a bug that's really plaguing me right now. She's showing you a lot of examples of all abstract work. So just quickly, again, because I don't want to spoil the issue for you. All abstracts, but she's giving you ideas of different things to work with wool. But if you're ripping it, right, you're just notching it with your scissors, ripping it down, you have a bit of a frayed look, you have a bit of an unfinished look. It sort of harkens back to the original days of rug hooking when everybody would rip wide pieces. A lot of people, and I wouldn't be surprised if in this article she also was using selvages and things like that. A lot of people like to do a piece that is just the selvages. They have a different thickness, a different texture, and a different feel overall. So this article is about doing abstract work and giving you tips on how to use your materials to advantage to get pieces that have a really sort of bohemian, artsy, very cool abstract feel about them. And this article is filled with tips, so I thought that was interesting. But I really like, particularly when Rug Hooking Magazine goes toward techniques that are not widely used or have not traditionally in the last decades been favored or used very often by the sort of top echelon of rug hookers. It's nice to think about using selvages. It's nice to think about ripping wide pieces. And what's the con that goes with using wide pieces? Well, you don't get detail. What's the pro that goes with using wide pieces that you ripped yourself? You get that nice old-fashioned look. You get a completely different look. And in this case, we're looking at how this kind of a look that in former days, lack of supplies in the 19th century, was very sort of rustic and folky looking, now can look very gallery and high end, right? Using the same material and same techniques. It's just what you're doing with it. It's nice to see different techniques being welcomed into rug making and viewed as viable, another thing for your bag of tricks, right? Why not? So this is a great article for that. I just love this. I love seeing things kind of shift a little bit. Broader appeal. So this is the article that I wrote, and of course I can show this one because I'm not going to send myself a nasty gram. I'm so rotten. What's wrong with me? So the Butlers, it's actually the Butlers and the Hugos. Vic Hugo and his mom, Alice Butler. I talk about them a lot, and I carry. Hey, Linda Ann. Oh, Christine said, Caledonia is about 20 minutes from you. Ooh, Wish I'd known about the exhibit, lovely little village with antique shops. Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me jumping in the car. That's going to have to go onto the list of great things to do in that part of New York, right? Interesting. So, guess who's sitting on the Prati rug right now? She's loving it. So this is the article I did on the Butlers. Just to keep it simple and streamlined, I wrote the Butlers, but we know we're talking about Alice Butler, who is the mom, and her son, Vic Hugo, who did all the designing. She did all the making. I loved writing this article. I love this story. I have the rights to these patterns in the Ribbon Candy Hooking store, and they are beautiful. I got a lot of mail after this article, people writing and saying they had never heard of Alice Butler and Vic Hugo, and they were very happy to be introduced to her. So that's exactly what I was trying to do with this piece, was to bring an awareness of this spectacular and large body of work that we've been looking at on Coffee Time and Cocktail Time for the better part of a year, bring it to an audience of more rug hookers who don't follow us here or don't know about us here. This was the image that I drew, pen drew, that people could kind of blow up and use. And this is Alice's finished piece in the colors that she chose. So it was quite a good article. It was quite long, and then it finished off with some of their newer pieces at the end. I was very happy to be able to contribute. I was very happy to be asked. It was a busy time for me, but I can always make time for Alice Butler, as you know. I just love her stuff. So hopefully you enjoyed that feature too. It was my favorite one in there because of the content. I just loved it. I loved seeing it. I didn't see any mistakes in there. Thank goodness. That's always my thing with writing for magazines, is I always feel like such a jerk if there's a mistake that's out of my control, but Rug Hooking Magazine did a bang-up job, absolutely perfect. Now, this is a nice article too, and this is another example of, I just love the way that things are going these days. Let me see if I can find it in the issue. I'm trying to see what page that is. This is just it's a different thrust, it's a different article, page number 62, Stitching Stories of Love in Fabric and Thread, Summer's Best Pickings. Project and Photography by Kathy Gall / Meeting House Hill Designs. And this is the complete article here. But it's so sweet how she talks about, these are two of her grand nieces, picking blueberries with their sunglasses on, having a great time. And she translates this great moment in childhood, right, being together, picking the blueberries, into this beautiful piece that she stitches. This is not a hooked piece that is done with a hook. This is a piece that is done with a needle. This is a sewn piece. But here we are talking about something that is so important to me, and that is the crossing over of the mediums. We will never stay afloat. We will never stay intact as a craft if we don't cross over to other mediums once in a while and appreciate other fiber arts. Rug hooking is, it needs to be a bit more sort of flexible, more of a shapeshifter, because there's not enough of us out there. We're not even an official hobby anymore on Google. So it's nice to see Rug Hooking Magazine kind of reach across the aisle into a needle craft and not just hook crafts. I like it. It reminds us that we're all looking at the same thing. We're all holding a tool in our hand and doing a textile craft. This came out so pretty, and this article really shows you in great detail how to do this basket. The way that Kathy has done it is super expert, but she makes it look very, very easy. It's actually wool applique, putting wool down in vertical strips, and she shows you how to kind of lock them or anchor them in place with these little stitches, and it looks so true to the actual basket. Looks like a little Nantucket basket filled with blueberries. So there is some applique going on here, and it's a little bit of needle work too. The daisy stitch, you see those petals coming down like wallpaper on the sides. It's just a beautiful article, right, that reminds us that sometimes picking up a needle is a nice change, something different, right? It's actually a little bit longer. The next page is the page that shows you all these great close-up photographs of what you're going to need to do this exact piece. So I found that really encouraging, right, to see a nice crossover piece like that. Actually, there's 2 pages of it, because I just have to show you. This is so good when you get this kind of detail, making that basket, right? Because it has potential to be bewildering and thus off-putting. But Kathy shows you huge detail how to get that done. So this article was really pretty too. I'm fast forwarding a little bit to, this is one of these throwbacks. And I do love a good throwback. Let me just find it here. Applique flower basket. This is their feature that they sometimes do that's called Blast from the Past. And this is by Sherilyn Brubaker / Hooked Treasures. And this is from the archives of Rug Hooking magazine, the March, April, May article from 2000, right? So how can that be? That was 22 years ago. And this is actually a lesson this is the pattern that was given at that time. And this is a lesson in dyeing with onion skins, right? Onion skin dyeing. This is something we talk about a lot when we talk about natural dyes. Onion skin is one, unlike so many kinds of dyes that we say, it might grow in my part of the country, but it might not grow in yours. So it's hard to talk about natural dyeing often because I don't want to leave half of the population out if it's not something that you have handy. Of course, you can buy natural powder pigments and leafy pigments and all that kind of stuff online. All these companies, particularly on Etsy, sell that kind of stuff. But onion skins is one material that we can get anywhere because you can get them at the grocery store. And depending on how nice your grocer is or how large the store is you shop at, it is possible to kind of collect all of those little onion skins in a little net bag or something like that and buy them. Or a lot of grocers will just say, here, the whole box is filled with them. The whole bottom of the box is filled with onion skins. Just take them. So this article is about what you can do with these onion skins. It gives a very subtle effect. I'm going to go to the second picture. It is the background. And of course, this is a photograph of a picture in Rug Hooking magazine that is an older picture. It's not a super high quality picture at that. But this was done by Sherilyn Brubaker, Brunswick, Maine. She did this piece in 1998. And the whole background was done with these onion skins. And I think this is really cool because she tells you a lot about how to do the dyeing. Doesn't just give you the pattern. Everything else in this is hooked with pre-colored or pre-dyed materials. It's just the background that she did with the onion skins. And she says, why dye? She says there's several reasons why you might want to learn to dye your own wool. And she says one of them is I find that it's becoming increasingly difficult to find wool in specific colors. That can certainly happen. Also, commercially dyed wool is flat in appearance and it's not always interesting. Now remember, this article is from 1998, and I think there are a lot more mottled wools, patterned wools that are available right now because of the internet blowing up and so many companies being right there and you being able to find them, right? But she also talks about the how-to part of doing the onion skin dyeing. And I thought that was really handy because, again, this is something that we can all do. You know, antique black is the other extreme when you have this sort of faded black background that has lots of other colors present. If you want the same thing but in a lighter color, right, on the other end of the color spectrum, onion skin is great because you get that very light background, but it does have little tinges of other colors. So she talks about onion skin dyeing, how it's one of the easiest methods that you could use. And she recommends that you use net bags like that hold the citrus fruits, you know, those like plasticky net ones. She says use those for storing onion skins because hanging the bag allows the air to circulate and further dry, right? Because they might seem dry. They might be a little bit damp and waxy and a little bit wet, right, moist. If you leave them in one of those citrus bag skins, they can air dry for some time before you actually use them. And she says save the outer hard brown skins from yellow or white onions, not red onions. If you or your family are not onion eaters, your local grocer will probably let you collect loose onion skins that accumulate in the bottom of the bin. So again, it makes for being a nice person and a friendly person and making a nice relationship with that whoever's in charge of the onion skins. But she tells you how to make the solution and all of that, and you can end up with just a beautiful background, beautiful neutral background. And I'll tell you, it's hard to see on the monitor, but there's lots of that nice kind of lemony yellow, a nice citrusy yellow, lots of little salmon, and little tiny soft subtle pops of blue, lilac, that kind of a thing. That reminds me, Jay, can you get the bag that's on the floor? Perfect timing.
That's what I'm here for. Which bag?
That one with that's black with red straps. That was perfect timing. Thank you. It's nice to have those subtle backgrounds because it's hard to get those subtle backgrounds, and that leads me into this conversation because oh no, this is the wrong bag. Do I have another bag there? Yep. Oh, it's the bag that fell off the chair and is under the table now. I'm sorry. Super high maintenance this morning, huh? So I was working on that project I was telling you about. Thank you so much. And I was working on, I don't know if you saw the pictures on Facebook. I don't know if you're on Facebook, But I was working on this piece. This is what I ended up doing for this month because I haven't done a kit for a while with all this book stuff. This is the Stars and Stripes and Watermelons. And instead of doing like I was thinking of doing a hit or miss border, I thought, it's gonna be watermelons. But you could likewise do something like a citrus fruit or something nice and bright around the edge, because it tricks your eye into thinking that we are talking about a lamb's tongue, and it's not. So I started doing mine, and I haven't gotten very far. It was just yesterday, and I was out like all day. But I'll show it to you close up, because I'm working in this material this is not onion skin dyed, but it's the same idea. Super light material that I dyed, if I can find it. These are the colors, because some people are already buying it. These are the colors, the blue for her skirt that is going to have the white stars. The monitor's not good, but I have my shades down. Bright green for the sort of rind of the watermelon. This is the watermelon color. And then I like the faded colors for the flag. Yep, and then that's the watermelon color. This is her top. This more of a, the meaty orangey pink for the watermelon. But the point is, I was working on this. It took about 15 or 16 squirt bottles of color, very, very faint, with just a few grains of powder to make this spot dyed material that I made. And I've been cutting this up and using it for the piece. But it is a lot of colors, super, 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 super faint. Right, and it's making, as a result, a background that is super, super, super faint, but with just little pops of color. That's just what I wanted. This is a little more color than you get when you're doing onion dyeing. Again, I used 15 or 16 chemical dyes, tiny amount, right, of powder in my hairdresser squirt bottles, and I just put the wool into the casserole dish, right, at about 320 for about 10 minutes. A little bit damp wet, right? Not soaking wet. And then I just used all those different squirt bottles to squirt all of those colors. So I got a real variety of colors. I didn't do too much with greens. I did like lemons and blues and oranges and some faint colors that I thought would match those watermelons. But, my point is, number one, that this is for sale and it's a fun kit to do, whether you have been at it for a while or you're a beginner. Stars are hard, but I'm going to do a video tutorial on hooking the stars with those vicious points, right? The point is, I forgot I got my little church that I'm going to put over here, that whether you have chemical dyes or not, you could do the same kind of very pretty mixed yet subtle neutral background with the onion skin. So that is a great, oh, Rita, good to see you. You can use your snipped ends of your wool to make confetti dyed wool too. Rita, that is true. That's a great thing. Rug Hooking Magazine covered that maybe, I don't know, it was sometime last year, that technique of where you have your wool and then you take your little wool worms that you haven't used, or your little snips, small pieces that you haven't used, and you can roll them into your wool like you were doing silk tie dyeing, and it will transfer in the same way as if you were doing your silk tie dyeing, right? You're lifting the color, the pigment from one thing onto the other. But since there's only snippets of it, right, you're lifting the color from it onto your wool. And then you're getting a mixed background that way too. That's called confetti dyeing. Officially, but yeah, they covered that I think sometime last year. That was another great article in Rug Hooking Magazine. There's so many ways to get a cool, colorful background, particularly if you want it to be subtle. So in this article, the author was saying, you want a nice background, 1998 or 2000, the year that it came out. She made it in 1998. She's saying, you want a nice background, but sometimes it's hard to find the thing to buy that you want. And she went ahead and did it with the onion skins. And people still are dyeing with onion skins all over the place. Onion skins and black walnut seem to be the two things that people dye the most often with, that are easy to get, working with natural dyes. And both of those things are super fun to use. It's a great issue. That's what we got to today. On Wednesday, right, because we're doing Monday, Wednesday, Fridays now. Wednesday, this is what we've been looking at in this episode. And last week, we barely scratched the surface last week. But on Wednesday, I'll be back and we'll look at this current episode of ATHA, issue of ATHA that came right around the same time as the Rug Hooking Magazine. We'll see what some of the great features in this article are, in this issue are, on Wednesday. And I want to remind you, Friday night is bingo night. So the link for bingo night in Monet and all of the new products that are up are in the body of this video under the description, right? But also on Ribbon Candy Hooking and in our Facebook group. If you're in our Facebook group, which is Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club. You are very welcome there. Today is Monday. That means it's Madcap Monday. This is the day of the week that people are allowed to sell their stuff on our Facebook page, so that we don't do it every day, because then the posts get buried and we can't see anything anyone's working on or find questions that people are throwing out there in a panic. So on Mondays only we do our selling day, and it's a good day to check it out because there's some beautiful things that have been posted in the shop this morning from lots of different people and lots of different rug hooking companies. Madcap Monday. Hey, thumbs up. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment on these videos. Keep the videos, the more you comment, the more you like, the more you give interest and attention to the videos, the further up they come in the feed, and other people can find them more easily and find us more easily, particularly if they're looking for something to do and they like a buddy. Rita says, I don't use a bag either when you dye with onions. Some do, but then you don't get the great flow of color. It's a little more messy, but worth it. Interesting. That's a great tip. So that, bear that in mind, right? Everybody has their different ways of doing it, but it's great that you said not only that you do something different, but why you do something different, because that makes a lot of sense. So interesting. Oh, I missed. Yes, my grocer thought I was crazy when I asked him if I could clean his onions. Something you don't get every day. It sounds like it's a metaphor for something, right? Luckily, it's not. It's just literally you want the onion skins, and that's that. So great to see everybody. Happy Monday. And I will look forward to seeing you on Wednesday when we look at the next episode of ATHA, the current one. Remember the bingo. Remember everything that's going on. And if you need me in the meantime, I am at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. I will